December 28th, circumcision and naming. After 8 days had passed, it was time to circumcise the child, and he was called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the time of his circumcision came, namely the 8th day on which the law commanded the child be circumcised, they circumcised him in the cave. And the old Hebrew woman took the foreskin, others say she took the navel-string, and preserved it in an alabaster box of old oil of spikenard. And she had a son who was a druggist, to whom she said, Take heed thou sell not this alabaster box of spikenard ointment, even if you are offered 300 pence for it. Now this is the alabaster box which Mary the sinner procured, and poured forth the ointment out of it upon the head and the feet of the Lord Jesus Christ, and wiped it off with the hairs of her hand. Circumcision is an ancient way of marking permanently the ones who belong. Baptism, which is readily available to both females and males, serves as a comparable function as a way of marking those who are entering into the way of the Tao. I don't really understand why this foreskin is so valuable, but I understand valuing objects.
What might the foreskin or the umbilical cord or whatever symbolize? That could be a symbol for something, don't you think? Keeping in mind that Jesus is not an actual human child, but a symbol for something that is in all humans.
Because she even specifically says, even if you're offered 300 pence, which I don't know how much that would have been back then, but clearly it was valuable.
Well, I guess maybe what it might symbolize is that even the foreskin of the Christ consciousness, even a tiny little piece of it, is worth more than 300 pence, which I imagine is a lot of money back then.
Mm-hmm.
That's stretching it maybe, but it shows the value that even a tiny piece of this presence, this power that is in all humans, is worth preserving at all costs, because even that tiny piece is immensely valuable.
It's too bad they didn't just cut some hair. This poor child.
I know that the idea behind circumcision, that little postscript that you read from the author, talks about how it's marking people who are chosen almost.
The ones who belong.
Right.
Or entering into the way of the Tao.
Yeah. But to me, baptism seems like a much better way of doing it than cutting.
Yeah, than mutilating someone. Yes, I agree. Baptism, all for it. Circumcision, not so much.
It's interesting, though, because circumcision is widespread among many different cultures. In Africa, obviously the Jews do it, but it's like it's a practice that is not universal, but almost. It seems like it's found in many different cultures that didn't have any communication with each other, any contact with each other. And so they all kind of arrived at the same idea that in order to prepare or symbolize a boy's arrival to manhood, you have to change his body somehow. You have to make a permanent scar and change to the boy so that he's no longer a boy, he becomes a man.
But I think it coincides with when women get their first period, because for them that is a rite of passage, a physical change. It's a symbol of starting to become a woman, whereas men don't have that. And so some cultures, that's what they did, was circumcise. But that act, to me, is mutilation. I think it's a form of torture. And I wish there was something else that we could do.
Anything that's against the boy's will. But that's part of it, is you're dragging the boy out of boyhood and into manhood. And in a lot of these cultures that I've read about, like Papua New Guinea and stuff, the boys don't want to leave their mom. They don't want to be, but they're dragged by the men and they're terrified. They're put through this like harrowing ritual that ends with this ritual scarring, and they don't have a choice. But women don't have a choice either. You get your period and that's it. You don't get to delay it. You don't get to say no thank you. So in a way, it's like almost like balancing the scales for the genders. It's like, well, yeah, and you know that every man in your tribe has gone through it.
Yeah.
It's not like you're the only one, right? So, yeah, anyways, it is like obviously barbaric, and there's probably better ways of doing it, but the actual idea behind it, I think, makes a lot of sense. Thanks for joining us. Catch us tomorrow.
Bye.